I want to start today by basically attacking your ego, and my own for that matter.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Because we all walk around with this very specific self-image. We're rational, we're logical adults.
Mm.
We make decisions based on facts. We weigh the pros and the cons. If I buy a car, it's because I've calculated its utility against, the hit to my bank account. If I negotiate a salary, I'm basing it on market value and my own worth.
It's the classic model of Homo economicus, the idea that we're these perfectly calibrated calculators of utility.
Exactly. But the research we are diving into today suggests that this self-image is, well, it's a hallucination. It's a complete fabrication.
Wow, okay.
The sources we've pulled, we're looking specifically at behavioral economics and some really, really unsettling experiments from the last few decades. They paint a picture of humanity that is less sophisticated supercomputer and a lot more confused baby goose.
Baby goose is a very specific, and I have to say, a slightly insulting biological classification.
It is.
But based on the data we're about to talk about, it's frighteningly accurate.
We're absolutely going to get to the geese, I promise. But first, we need to set the stage. The mission of this deep dive is to unpack the mystery of value.
Right.
How do we decide what something is worth? And I don't mean in a big philosophical, what is the worth of a human's soul kind of way. I mean, how do you personally decide that a cup of coffee is worth $4, but an app on your phone is too expensive at 99 cents?
It's the fundamental question of our economic lives, really. And the answer we always get, the textbook answer, is supply and demand.
The invisible hand.
The invisible hand, yeah. We assume there's this giant force moving prices around until they settle at the right number, but the reality is that our brains are incredibly lazy when it comes to value.
Yeah.
We just don't have an internal value meter.
We don't have a meter, at all.
No. Think about it. If I gave you some weird alien object you'd never seen before, you wouldn't be able to tell me if it was worth $5 or $5,000.
I'd have no frame of reference.
Exactly. You would have no biological way to assess it. So to cope with this complete blindness, our brains rely on two major shortcuts, or glitches, if you want to call them that.
Glitches in the matrix. I like it.
The two glitches are relativity and anchoring.
Relativity and anchoring. Okay, these sound like physics terms, but I have a very strong feeling they're about to explain why I'm broke.
They explain why you're broke, they explain why you're envious of your neighbors, and they explain why you probably own a lot of things you don't actually want.
Fantastic. I love a good existential crisis on a Tuesday. So let's start with the first glitch. Let's start with relativity.
Right. So because we don't have that internal meter to measure absolute value, our brains take a shortcut. We focus on relative advantage.
Okay.
We estimate value by comparing one thing to another thing that is sitting right next to it.
So when you're at the movie theater and you're comparing the medium popcorn to the large popcorn to decide if it's a good deal.
That is the perfect example. You can't judge the medium popcorn in a vacuum. You have no idea what it's worth.
Yeah.
But you can look at the large one for 50 cents more and think, wow, that's a bargain.
Right.
But this total dependency on comparison leads to some behaviors that are, when you look at them up close, completely insane. And Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman, who are basically the godfathers of this entire field, ran a classic experiment that just perfectly illustrates this. It's called the pen versus suit dilemma.
I remember reading this in the brief, and my first thought was, there is no way people are this inconsistent. But okay, walk us through it.
Okay, so put yourself in this scenario. You're out running errands on a Saturday morning. Your first stop is an office supply store because you need a nice pen. You find one you like, and you look at the price tag. It's $25.
Okay. $25. It's a little steep for a Bic, but let's say it's a nice fountain pen or something.
It's a nice pen.
Yeah.
But as you're standing there in the aisle, you check an app on your phone, or maybe a helpful stranger just whispers to you that the exact same pen, same brand, same ink, everything, is on sale for $18 at a different store.
Okay, so a $7 savings.
A $7 savings. But here's the catch. The other store is a 15-minute drive away.
Right.
The question is simple. Do you make the trip?
My immediate gut reaction is yes. Absolutely. $7 is $7. Plus, $18 feels like a total steal compared to $25. That's what, nearly 30% off?
But
I'm driving. I feel like I won.
And you are right there with the vast majority of people. In this study, almost everyone says yes, they would drive 15 minutes to save the $7.
Okay, makes sense to me.
Now, let's keep you in the car. You've got your cheap pen, you feel great. Your next stop is a department store because you need a suit for a wedding next month.
Okay, much bigger ticket item.
A much bigger ticket item. You go in, you find a fantastic gray pinstripe suit. It fits you perfectly off the rack. You look at the price, it's $455.
Pricey, but that's pretty standard for a good suit. I'm not shocked.
Right. So you're about to swipe your credit card, and that same helpful stranger appears out of nowhere and taps you on the shoulder.
This guy is following me.
He is. He says, hey, I just came from the store across town, the one that's 15 minutes away, and this exact same suit is on sale there for $448.
Okay, so let me do the math in my head. 455 minus 448, that's $7 again.
It is the exact same $7 difference, the same 15-minute drive. Do you get back in your car to get the cheaper suit?
And my gut says, absolutely not. No way.
Why not?
I'm already spending $450. Driving 15 minutes just to save $7 feels, I don't know, it feels petty. It feels like a total waste of time for such a small amount. I just buy the suit right there and be done with it.
And that is exactly what almost every participant in the study said. Most people refuse to drive for the suit discount. But just stop for a second and look at what just happened.
I know. I'm being completely inconsistent.
You're not just being inconsistent. You're effectively saying that your time has a different monetary value depending on what you're buying.
Oh, wow.
In the first scenario, 15 minutes of your life was worth $7. You were more than willing to sell that quarter hour for that price.
Mm-hmm.
In the second scenario, 15 minutes of your life was suddenly worth more than $7, so you refused the trade.
It's baffling when you strip it down like that, because my bank account doesn't know where the $7 came from. It doesn't have a pen savings column and a suit savings column.
Right.
$7 is $7. It buys the same amount of bread or gas or whatever. The context shouldn't matter.
Precisely. A rational robot, that Homo economicus we talked about at the top, would either value their time at $7 or not. The decision would be the same in both cases. But for a human, the context is absolutely everything.
So why? Why are we broken like this? What is the glitch?
The glitch is that we process information in percentages, not in absolutes. We look at the relative advantage. $7 off of a $25 item looks like a giant slice of the pie. It's significant. It feels like a huge win.
Right, the big percentage.
But $7 off of a $455 item, it looks like a rounding error. It feels like a speck of dust. It's an insignificant percentage.
So we are essentially blind to the absolute cash value. We only see the ratio.
Correct. And this is the fundamental problem of relativity. We lack a broad perspective. We only compare things locally. And marketers, believe me, they know this. They exploit this flaw every single day.
Oh, for sure. This is the entire principle behind upselling, right? Especially on big purchases.
It's the classic letter seeds trap. The research we looked at highlights this explicitly. Imagine you're at a car dealership. You've been there for hours, you've haggled, you've argued, you've finally negotiated a price of $25,000 for a new sedan. You're exhausted.
I hate that feeling. You're just ready to be done.
You're ready to sign and leave. And then the salesperson says, you know, for just $3,000 more, we can add the premium leather package and the heated steering wheel.
And in that moment, when you're already staring at a number as big as $25,000, $3,000 feels kind of small. It feels like just a little bump.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It feels proportionate. Your brain thinks, well, I'm already in for 25 grand. What's another 3? It's only about 10% more. So you add it.
Right.
But now, let's take that same consumer you and put them in a furniture store on a totally separate day. You're looking for a new sofa. You see a nice fabric one for, say, $2,000. And then you see a leather version of it that costs $5,000.
So $3,000 more.
The same $3,000 upgrade.
That feels outrageous. That feels like a whole vacation.
Yeah.
Or a new high-end laptop. I would never casually drop an extra $3,000 on a sofa upgrade without agonizing over it for weeks.
Even though, and be totally honest with yourself here, you will likely spend significantly more hours of your life sitting on that sofa than you will sitting in that car.
Oh, without a doubt. The sofa is the command center of my entire life. The car is for commuting.
But because of relativity, the $3,000 in the car dealership feels cheap relative to the huge price of the car, while the same $3,000 in the furniture store feels expensive relative to the smaller price of the sofa.
We fail to ask the only question that actually matters.
Which is,
what else could I do with this $3,000?
yes, that requires broad thinking. And our brains don't want to do that. They want to think narrowly. We want to look at the thing right next to us and make the easy comparison.
It's so lazy.
It's incredibly lazy. And this glitch doesn't just affect our shopping habits. The sources we have point to a much, much darker application of relativity.
I was afraid of this.
It affects how we value ourselves and our place in society.
This is the part of the research that really made me cringe. We absolutely have to talk about what the sources call the CEO pay catastrophe. And I don't use that word lightly.
No, catastrophe is the right word for the sociological impact. To really get this, we have to go back in time a bit to 1976.
The era of disco and bell-bottoms.
And, believe it or not, relatively modest executive compensation. In 1976, the average CEO was paid about 36 times as much as the average worker.
Okay, 36 times is still a pretty big gap. If a worker made, say, $10,000, the CEO made $360,000. That's a healthy difference.
It's a healthy gap, but it's not another planet, right? You're in the same solar system.
You're on the same planet. Okay.
So fast forward to 1993. That gap had widened significantly. By then, CEOs were making 131 times the average worker.
Okay, so the gap more than tripled in less than 20 years, and people started to notice.
Regulators definitely noticed. The public noticed. There was this growing sentiment that executive greed was getting completely out of control. So the regulators decided to step in. And they thought they had the perfect rational solution.
Transparency.
Transparency. The logic was so simple and clean. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. If we force companies to publicly reveal exactly what their top 5 executives are getting paid, salary, bonuses, stock options, the whole package, then public shame will curb the greed.
The idea being the board of directors won't want to be seen paying these outrageous sums, and the CEOs themselves will be embarrassed to take it.
Yes, it's such a logical plan. If we just show everyone the numbers will have to come down.
It's a perfectly rational plan if you assume that CEOs compare their salary to the public or to the average worker.
But they don't.
Who do they compare themselves to?
Other CEOs?
Of course. Of course they do.
Once that data became public, it didn't create shame. It created envy. It created a scoreboard. Suddenly, any CEO in America could look at the SEC filings and say, wait a minute. I'm running a Fortune 500 company, but Johnson over at our competitor is making $5 million a year, and I'm only making $4 million. This is an insult. I'm being undervalued.
It turned salary into a competitive sport.
100%. And then you had the rise of the compensation consultants. Warren Buffett has this brilliant line about them. He calls them ratchet, ratchet, and bingo.
Ratchet, ratchet, and bingo. I'm guessing because they only ever ratchet things up.
That's the mechanism. Imagine you're on the compensation committee for a major company. You have to decide what to pay your CEO. The consultants come in with this nice, colorful chart showing what every other CEO in your industry is being paid.
The scoreboard.
The scoreboard. Now, are you going to stand up in that board meeting and say, you know, I think our CEO is below average, so we should pay him below the median?
Absolutely not. That's a vote of no confidence. That signals to the market that you have a bad CEO. You have to say, our guy is a rock star. He's top tier. He deserves top tier pay.
Exactly. Every board wants to believe their CEO is in the top quartile. So every board raises the pay to hit the top quartile. But when everyone raises the pay to get into the top quartile,
the entire average just goes up.
The average goes up. And then next year, to hit the new higher top quartile, you have to raise it again. It's a ratchet. It only clicks one way.
So what was the final result of this grand experiment in transparency?
We went from 36 times the average worker in 1976 to 131 times in 1993 when the rule was implemented. And now, according to the source material, the average CEO makes about 369 times the average worker.
369 times.
So transparency didn't stop the greed. It poured gasoline on the fire of relativity.
It's just amazing how we completely misinterpreted the psychology there. We thought shame would be the primary motivator, but the drive for status, for relative status, was so much stronger.
There's a fascinating anecdote in the notes where the author of one of these studies asks an executive, what would happen if everyone in your company knew everyone else's salary? You know, radical transparency for the whole staff, not just the top.
And I'm guessing the executive had a panic attack.
He looked horrified. He said it would be a total catastrophe. He said, and I'm quoting here, everyone but the highest paid person would feel underpaid. And you know what? He's right.
Which is so deeply irrational. If I'm making $100,000 a year and I'm happy with my life, my house, my vacations, Finding out that you make $110,000 shouldn't change the utility of my money.
Right.
My rent is the same. My grocery bill is the same. My money buys the exact same stuff, but suddenly my $100,000 feels like less.
That feels like an insult. The satirist H.L. Mencken, he nailed this almost 100 years ago. He had this definition of a wealthy man. He said a wealthy man is one who earns $100 a year more than his wife's sister's husband.
That is suspiciously specific and hilarious.
But it's the perfect circle of comparison, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's salient. It's right there in your face at Thanksgiving dinner. You don't compare yourself to Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos. That gap is too big to even comprehend.
It's not a relevant comparison.
No. You compare yourself to the guy at the family barbecue who just bought a slightly nicer car than you. That's the comparison that stings.
This reminds me so much of the story of the Harvard doctor. This was in the reading, and it actually made me kind of sad. It's a perfect, tragic example of how relativity can actually derail a life.
It really is a tragedy when you think about it. So this story is about a brilliant physician, graduated top of his class from Harvard. His dream, his entire life's ambition was to cure cancer. He wanted to win the Nobel Prize.
That's the kind of ambition we should be encouraging in society. That's a good goal.
The best goal. And he was on his way. He was working in a top research lab, making about $160,000 a year. This is a few years ago, so that's a very comfortable upper-middle-class life. He had everything he needed. He was happy.
But then he went to his college reunion.
But then he looked at his circles of comparison. He saw his old friends who had skipped the research track and gone into medical investment banking or corporate consulting on Wall Street.
Ah.
And they weren't making $160,000. They were making millions. They had the yachts, the summer homes, and the Hamptons, the whole package.
And suddenly the Nobel Prize didn't look so shiny anymore.
Suddenly, relative to them, he felt poor. He told the researcher he felt like a failure. So he quit. He left cancer research and went to work for a hedge fund on Wall Street to chase the money.
So we potentially lost a cancer cure because of the psychology of comparison.
That's the real cost of relativity. It's not just about overpaying for a suit or a car. It's about the misallocation of the talent of an entire generation.
And the source material notes that this is a huge factor in the shortage of family practice doctors,
A
right?
huge factor. Why be a family doctor making okay money when the specialist in the office next door makes 3 times as much for working similar hours? It creates this constant feeling of being undervalued.
This all sounds incredibly depressing. It sounds like we are basically doomed to be miserable as long as there is someone richer or more successful than us standing nearby. Is there a way out? Can we just opt out of relativity?
We can't turn off the brain's comparison engine. It's too deeply hardwired. It's how we make sense of the world. But we can choose what we feed it.
What do you mean?
We can consciously control the circles.
Control the circles, meaning be deliberate about who you stand next to, metaphorically.
Exactly. If you're at a class reunion and a big circle forms around the guy who's loudly bragging about his IPO, don't walk over there. Don't stand in the blast radius of that comparison. Go talk to the teachers. Go talk to the artists. Find a different circle.
Don't go to open houses for mansions you can't afford just for fun.
It's never just for fun. What you're actually doing is calibrating your relativity meter to a level that will guarantee you be unhappy with your own perfectly good home.
There was that great story about James Hong, the founder of Hokernaut.com. He had a Porsche Boxster.
Which is a fantastic car, a dream car for many people.
It's a Porsche. But he sold it, and he bought a Toyota Prius. And not because he suddenly became an environmentalist or needed the gas mileage.
No. He told the New York Times, I don't want to live the life of a Boxster.
I love that quote.
It's so insightful. He realized that if you have a Boxster, you start hanging out with other Porsche people, and then you start wishing you had a 911. And if you're lucky enough to get the 911, you start looking at your friends who have a Ferrari.
It's the hedonic treadmill. The goalposts just keep moving.
Cycle of relativity.
Yeah.
He realized the only winning move was to get off that particular ladder entirely. He changed his circle of comparison. He got out of the game.
The only winning move is not to play.
But you just used a word there. You talked about changing his anchor point.
Yeah.
And that is the perfect bridge to the second and arguably even stranger half of this deep dive.
Right. Because so far, we've only talked about how we judge value by comparing things that are already there. The pen versus the pen, the salary versus the salary, the Porsche versus the Ferrari. But that begs a massive fundamental question. Where does the first price come from?
Exactly. If I'm comparing everything to something else, there has to be a patient zero of pricing. There has to be a starting point. If I see a brand new product that I've never seen before and there is no competitor to compare it to, How in the world do I know if it's expensive or cheap?
And this brings us to the second glitch, anchoring. And to explain this, we have to talk about one of the greatest marketing magic tricks of the 20th century. We have to tell the legend of the Black Pearl.
This story is so good it feels like it should be a movie. It has everything: WWII, diamonds, exotic islands, fortunes made and lost.
So set the scene for us. Who's our main character?
Okay, so meet Salvador Assael. He's known in the industry as the Pearl King. He was a diamond dealer who made a fortune, but in 1973, his yacht happens to bump into a man named Jean-Claude Bruyère. Bruyère is this swashbuckling French adventurer who had just bought an entire atoll in French Polynesia, just a paradise island.
As one does. Not a bad impulse buy.
Not at all. And the lagoon of this atoll is teeming with these unique black-lipped oysters. And inside them are these dark, moody, black pearls.
Now, today we hear Black Pearl, and we immediately think luxury. We think rare. We think
Pirates of the Caribbean.
right. It has this whole mystique.
But in 1973, these things were worthless. Literally worthless.
You mean there was just a small market for them?
No, I mean, there was no market. They were a strange gunmetal gray color. They were roughly the size of musket balls. Assael took a handful of them back to his commercial contacts in New York, and they laughed him out of the room. He couldn't sell a single one. He couldn't give them away.
They were just weird gray rocks to these people.
That's all they were. A rational businessman would have cut his losses right there, maybe sold them to a button factory for pennies on the dollar. But Assael didn't want to sell buttons. He wanted to sell gems.
So since there was no market demand, he decided to just hallucinate one into existence.
That's the perfect way to put it. He decided to create demand. And to do that, he used an anchor. He waited a year until the oysters produced some slightly better-looking specimens. Then he flew to New York and went to his old friend, Harry Winston.
The Harry Winston. The jeweler to the stars. The king of diamonds.
The one and only. Assael somehow convinced Winston to put these strange black pearls in the window of his flagship store on Fifth Avenue. But the key wasn't just the location. It was the price tag.
He must have priced them low to get some interest.
He did the exact opposite. Winston put an outrageously, obscenely high price on them.
He just made up a number.
Pulled it out of thin air. He priced them as if they were the rarest gems on Earth, right up there with the finest diamonds. And at the exact same time, Assael took out full-page ads in the glossiest, most high-end fashion magazines. And in the photos, he placed the black pearls right next to diamonds, rubies, and emeralds.
I see what he did there. He didn't let you compare the black pearl to a button. He forced you to compare it to a diamond.
He created the anchor. He told the public, you don't know what this weird gray rock is, but look, it's sitting next to a diamond. And it costs as much as a diamond, therefore...
It must be as valuable as a diamond.
And it worked. Instantly, almost overnight, black pearls became the ultimate status symbol. They were on the necks of the wealthiest women in Manhattan. The demand exploded.
But nothing had actually changed about the pearls. They were the same gray musket balls that he couldn't even give away a year earlier.
The only thing that changed was the anchor. Mark Twain actually wrote about this in The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. He said, in order to make a man covet a thing, it is only necessary to make the thing difficult to attain. Assael made them expensive and exclusive, and our brains just filled in the rest of the story.
This is genuinely terrifying. You're telling me that supply and demand is basically a myth? That demand can just be fabricated by a high price tag?
In many, many cases, yes. The price tag isn't a reflection of the inherent value. The price tag creates the perception of value. We see the high price, and we construct a narrative in our heads to justify it. Oh, it costs $10,000. It must be incredibly rare. The craftsmanship must be amazing.
We are so easily manipulated. It's embarrassing.
It all goes back to the baby geese.
Okay, you promised we'd get there. Explain the geese.
So, the famous naturalist Konrad Lorenz did this groundbreaking work. He discovered that when goslings' baby geese crack out of their eggs, they have this critical window of a few hours where they will attach themselves to the first moving object they see.
In nature, that's going to be the mother goose.
Right. Follow mom, you get food, you survive. It's a great evolutionary trick.
Okay.
But Lorenz found that if he was the first thing they saw when they hatched, they would imprint on him. He would walk around his farm in his big rubber boots, and this little line of baby geese would just waddle after him everywhere he went. They completely ignored their biological mother. They were loyal to the first thing they saw.
They were anchored to the boots.
We are exactly the same. But instead of boots, we imprint on prices. The very first price we see for a new category of product becomes our mother goose. It becomes the anchor against which we judge all future prices in that category, maybe for the rest of our lives.
So for the black pearls, the insane price in Harry Winston's window was the mother goose, and every single black pearl sold after that was judged relative to that first crazy number.
Exactly. Suddenly, someone sees a strand for only $5,000 and they think, wow, what a steal compared to the ones on Fifth Avenue.
Okay, but that's luxury jewelry. That's a weird nebulous world built on marketing. Surely, when it comes to things we actually understand, like everyday items, we aren't this dumb. If I'm buying a keyboard or a bottle of wine, I'm not going to be tricked by some random number.
You would hope so. You would really, really hope so, but you would be wrong. And this brings us to what might be the most famous and disturbing experiment in this whole field, the Social Security number experiment.
Okay, lay it on me.
This was done at MIT, at the Sloan School of Management. So we aren't talking about random people off the street. These are brilliant MBA students. These are the future masters of the universe.
The smartest guys in the room?
Supposedly. So the researchers, led by Dan Ariely, handed out a form to the students. On the form, they listed a bunch of items they were going to auction off. A bottle of Côte du Rhône wine, a box of Belgian gourmet truffles, a cordless trackball.
A cordless trackball. That really dates the study, doesn't it?
It was the height of 1990s technology. But here is the brilliant, evil twist. Before the students could bid on these items, the researchers asked them to do something simple. Write down the last 2 digits of their Social Security number at the top of the page.
Okay, that's a completely random number. It means nothing. My last 2 are, let's say, 79.
So you write down 79. Then they asked a very weird 2-part question for each item. First, would you pay that amount in dollars for this bottle of wine? So in your case, would you pay $79 for this wine? You just circle yes or no.
Okay, so they're forcing you to connect your random number to the product.
They are making you consider it as a price, a hypothetical question. But then after you've done that, they ran a real auction. They said, okay, now write down the most you would actually be willing to pay for each of these items. And the highest bidder would actually have to buy it.
Okay, so now logic should kick in. My SSN is 79, which is just a random scribble. But I know what a bottle of wine is worth. I know what a trackball is probably worth. I should ignore the 79 and bid the actual market value.
That's what Homo economicus would do. But that is not what the MIT MBA students did. The results were staggering. The students with the highest ending SSN digits, say 80 to 99, bid dramatically higher than the students with low digits, like 0 to 20.
How much higher? A little bit higher.
Not a little bit. We're talking about a 200 to 300% difference on average. For the cordless keyboard, the students with SSNs in the top 20% bid an average of $56. The students with SSNs in the bottom 20% bid an average of $16.
Wait, stop. You are telling me that because I wrote down the number 88 on a piece of paper 5 minutes ago, I am now willing to pay nearly 4 times as much for a keyboard than the guy next to me who happened to write down 12.
Yes. That is exactly what the data shows.
That is brain damage. That's not a glitch. That's a fundamental malfunction.
The term for it is arbitrary coherence.
Unpack that. That sounds like a complete oxymoron.
It is. It's arbitrary because the starting point of your Social Security number was totally and completely random. It had zero relevance to the value of a keyboard. But it's coherent because once that random anchor was set, the brain tried to make everything else logic consistent relative to that anchor.
What do you mean by consistent?
Well, if you look at the data, everyone, regardless of their SSN anchor, agreed that the expensive bottle of wine was worth more than the cheap bottle of wine. Everyone agreed the keyboard was worth more than the trackball.
So the internal logic, the relative ordering, was fine.
The relative order was perfectly preserved. That's the coherence. But the baseline, the sea level from which they were measuring the value of everything, was determined by a completely random number they had just written on a piece of paper.
This implies that we don't actually know what anything is worth. We are just guessing based on the last number we happen to see.
We are adrift. We are floating in a sea of price ambiguity. And when the brain doesn't know the real value, it just grabs onto anything solid it can find. Oh, 79. Sure, that sounds like a price. Let's start there and work our way down.
That is deeply, deeply unsettling. It means that market prices aren't set by some aggregate wisdom of the crowd. They might just be set by historical accidents that we've all just accepted as the right price.
Precisely. Why is a diamond engagement ring supposed to cost 2 months' salary? Because the De Beers diamond cartel said so in an ad campaign in the 1940s, and we all anchored to it. Why is a cup of coffee at Starbucks $4? Because they set that as the anchor, and now we judge every other coffee against it.
But surely these anchors aren't permanent. I mean, if I realize I've been anchored to a high price, can't I just snap out of it? Can't I reset?
That's the next logical question that researchers asked. Are these anchors fleeting first impressions, or do they stick around and influence our future decisions? To find out, they subjected poor, unsuspecting people to the annoying sound experiment.
I just love that behavioral economists are basically just sadists with tenure.
They really, really are. For this one, they brought participants into a lab and made them listen to a series of truly unpleasant noises. High-pitched squeals, abrasive white noise, oscillating tones, just really grating stuff.
Sounds like my morning commute.
Then they tried to set an anchor. They went to one group and asked a hypothetical question. Would you be willing to listen to this horrible 30-second sound again for 10 cents? To a very low anchor. The suggestion is, hey, this is a cheap experience.
Okay, a dime.
Then they went to another group and asked, would you listen to this again for 90 cents?
A much higher anchor.
And then after that suggestion, they asked for the real price. Yes. They then said, okay, for real now, what is the lowest amount of money I would have to pay you to make you endure this noise again?
And I'm going to go out on a limb and say the 10-cent group sold themselves very short.
Drastically short. The 10-cent group demanded an average of only 33 cents to do it again. The 90-cent group demanded an average of 73 cents.
More than double, for the exact same amount of pain and suffering.
Just because of the initial number that was suggested to them. But here is the real kicker. They then tried to break the anchor. In the next phase of the experiment, they introduced a new, different, annoying sound. And this time, they suggested a 50-cent anchor to everyone.
So they tried to reset the market to a neutral middle ground.
Right. Logic would dictate that both groups should now converge on 50 cents, or somewhere close to it. But they didn't. The group that started low stayed low. The group that started high stayed high. They largely ignored the new information and stuck to their original imprint.
They were loyal to the first mother boost they saw?
Unbelievably loyal. Even when the researchers, in a final phase, explicitly tried to flip them, suggesting 90 cents to the low group and 10 cents to the high group, it barely moved the needle. People stuck with their first impression. Once that anchor is set, it becomes part of your identity. I am the kind of person who listens to noise for cheap. Or, I am the kind of person who pays a lot for a bottle of wine.
This explains so much about the real world. I'm thinking about real estate again. This has to be why moving is so disorienting.
Housing is the ultimate anchor trap. It's the biggest purchase of your life, and you're probably making it based on a faulty anchor.
There was a study in the notes about people moving between cities, right?
Yes, a great one by Simonson and Lowenstein. They track people moving from different real estate markets. Let's say you move from a very cheap city like Lubbock, Texas, to a much more expensive city like Pittsburgh, or even more extreme, San Francisco.
Okay, so my anchor is low. I'm used to paying, I don't know, $800 for a nice two-bedroom apartment in Lubbock.
You arrive in the new expensive city. You start looking for apartments. You see that a similar two-bedroom is going to cost you $2,500 a month. Now, a rational person would say, well, the salaries are higher here, the market is different, I need to adjust my expectations and my budget.
But the baby goose inside my brain is screaming, no way, that's robbery, that's insane.
Exactly. You are anchored to the Lubbock price. So what do? The data shows you don't just spend the $2,500. You try to match your old anchor. You end up squeezing your entire family into a tiny, miserable one-bedroom apartment just to keep the monthly payment closer to what you feel is right.
We literally punish ourselves and our families just to honor a number from a different city.
We do. And it works the other way, too. People moving from super expensive cities like LA or New York to cheaper markets like Pittsburgh or Boise.
They must feel like they've won the lottery.
They arrive in Pittsburgh, and they see that they can buy a beautiful four-bedroom house for the price of their old studio apartment in Brooklyn. But do they bank the difference? Do they save the money?
I'm guessing no.
No. They are anchored to spending, say, $4,000 a month on housing. That number feels normal to them, so they go out and spend $4,000 a month on housing.
Then they end up buying a castle they don't need.
They buy a massive house they don't need, with high property taxes and huge utility bills, just because the number feels neutral to their LA-anchored brain. They don't adjust to the local market efficiency. They just replay their old tape.
So practically speaking, if I am moving to a new city, what is the fix? How do I avoid this trap?
The research is very clear on this. Rent.
Rent, not buy right away.
Do not buy right away. Rent for at least a year. Force your brain to live in the new environment. Let the daily exposure to new grocery prices, new gas prices, new rents slowly and painfully reset your internal anchor. Don't buy a house while your brain is still emotionally living in Texas. Wait until your brain has fully arrived in Pittsburgh.
That is incredibly solid advice. You have to let the new Mother Goose find you before you sign a 30-year mortgage. I want to pivot to one last concept because I think it affects every single person listening every single day. We've talked about luxury pearls, we've talked about houses, but what about the daily grind? What about the coffee?
Ah, yes. The Starbucks case study. This is the holy grail of behavioral economics anecdotes.
Because we all have that friend, or let's be brutally honest, we are that friend who complains about being broke but drops $6 on a fancy latte every morning without even blinking. How did we get here? How did that become normal?
This is a powerful phenomenon that the researchers call self-herding.
Self-herding. Okay, so we know what regular herding is. That's just following the crowd.
Right. You see a long line outside a new restaurant. You assume the food must be good, so you get in the line. That's social herding. Self-herding is when you follow yourself.
I follow my past self.
Yes. You come to believe that something is good or worth the price simply because you bought it previously.
The logic is, I did it before, therefore it must have been a good idea.
Precisely. Let's walk through the Starbucks timeline. 20 or 30 years ago, the anchor for a cup of coffee in America was Dunkin' Donuts, or the bodega, or a diner.
It was $1.50, maybe $1. It came in a styrofoam cup and it was fine.
It was fine. Then Howard Schultz comes along and creates Starbucks.
Right.
And he wants to charge $3 or $4 for a cup of coffee. This completely violates the existing anchor. It's too expensive. It's outrageous.
It's a non-starter for most people.
Right. But he does something brilliant. He changes the entire environment. He makes the stores smell like freshly roasted beans. He puts in comfy chairs and fireplaces. He gives all the drinks fancy Italian names. He does everything he can to break the direct comparison to Dunkin'. It's not coffee, it's an experience.
Okay, so he's trying to distance himself from the old anchor and create a new category.
He's trying to create a new Mother Goose. So one day you wander in, maybe you're exhausted, maybe it's raining, you're just desperate for caffeine. You see the price, you flinch, but you buy a small coffee anyway.
You break your own rule just this once.
Just this once. You drink it, it tastes pretty good. The caffeine hits your system, you feel better. It's a positive reinforcement.
Okay.
Now, fast forward to next week. You walk past that same Starbucks again. Your brain doesn't stop and do a complex, rational calculation of, is the marginal utility of this Starbucks coffee worth 300% more than the Dunkin' coffee down the street?
No. That takes way too much mental energy.
Your brain is lazy. It does a quick lookup in its memory. It asks, have we done this before?
And the answer is yes.
And the follow-up question is, and what happened? Did we die? No. Did we like it? Yes. So your brain concludes, I must have done a good analysis last time.
Yeah.
I trust my past self. That was a good decision. I'll do it again.
I get in line behind myself.
You get in line behind your past self. And the more times you do it, the deeper that mental groove gets. It becomes a habit. And then slowly you start moving up the menu. The small coffee becomes a medium. The medium becomes a venti. The black coffee becomes a latte, which becomes a frappuccino with extra whipped cream.
And suddenly I'm spending $6 a day on a coffee drink and I don't even remember how it happened.
And here's the truly scary part. You now defend that price. If someone tells you your coffee is too expensive, you get defensive. You say, no, it's worth it. It's my little treat. It's my morning ritual. You have now rationalized and internalized an anchor that was originally set by a random decision on a rainy Tuesday 5 years ago.
We build our entire lives, our entire budgets on top of these accidental decisions that we just keep reinforcing.
We do. We are layering anchors on top of anchors, herding ourselves into new price brackets without ever making a single conscious, rational choice about it.
This has been, frankly, a bit of a brain-melting session.
Wow.
To recap, we've gone from the relativity of CEO pay, where simply looking at your neighbor can destroy your own happiness, all the way to the complete manufacturing of demand for black pearls, where a price tag literally created value out of thin air.
And then we saw the Social Security number experiment, which proved that we can be anchored by completely random, meaningless numbers. And we ended with how we herd ourselves into expensive habits like Starbucks just because we're too lazy to rethink our past choices.
It all just keeps coming back to the Goslings. We imprint on the first thing we see and then we follow it blindly. We don't calculate value, we just follow.
And I think if there is one final provocative takeaway from all of this research, it's not just a practical tip like save more money. It's something much more philosophical.
Oh, on.
It's about agency. It's about free will. If your wants and your desires are based on random anchors you stumbled upon, And if your personal satisfaction is based entirely on comparing yourself to a neighbor who is also just chasing his own random anchors, then whose life are you actually living?
Are you living your life, or are you living the life that was dictated to you by the random number generator of your past experiences?
Are you driving that car because it truly brings you joy, or because it was just the logical next step up from your previous anchor? Are you in your current career because it fulfills you, or because you're trapped in a salary comparison loop with your college roommate that started 20 years ago?
That really is the red pill moment, isn't it? Once you start to see the anchors, you can't unsee them everywhere.
And seeing them is the first step to finally cutting the rope.
So here is our challenge to you, the listener, as you go about your week. Pick one thing. It could be a daily habit, a monthly purchase, even just a desire you have, and interrogate it. Ask it. Why do you cost this much? And why do I want you?
Dig all the way down to the bottom. Try to find the original decision and see if there's a solid foundation of real value down there, or if it's just a confused baby goose chasing a pair of old rubber boots.
On that slightly unsettling note, good luck with your newfound existential crisis. Thanks for diving deep with us.
It was a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.